Presidential candidate Senator Kamala Harris wants to take away certain freedoms in the name of democracy. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. As you can see, we're only going to be doing one topic today, and I apologize for missing yesterday. As I've warned you guys, it will be inconsistent throughout the semester as to how many episodes I'll be doing a week and how many topics I will be covering within those episodes. It all truly depends on the schedule I have and what that week brings. So without any further ado, we'll jump right into the show. So Senator Kamala Harris was on Town Hall CNN yesterday, and she said something very deeply concerning. One of the things that caught my attention right away was her statements on private insurance, health insurance that is, and I'll go ahead and play you a clip from that. And this is from an article from the Daily Caller, and this is a clip from the Town Hall CNN.
So just to follow up on that, correct me if I'm wrong, to reiterate, you support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
All right, let's go to the next question.
Why that too?
Yeah, you heard that. That delay she is referring to under private insurance for approval or rejection for certain care based on coverage may be in part true. Maybe there's some kernel of truth in there. What she fails to tell you is that under a government control health plan, you will be able to get what the government decides you can get. They'll control it all. For example, we saw a case in Britain where a couple's baby was going to die if they didn't get it to a hospital that could take care of the issues it was having. I can't remember the exact issues, but it was going to die. And the government refused to allow them to remove their child and ensure that the parents couldn't take their own child because of state-run health care. Another example is in Canada, where they can, by law, take your child away if you don't allow your child to be transgender if they claim to be. This is what happens when we have state-run health care. The government literally has control over your health. Nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody complains about the job our government does currently, yet we want to entrust them with more responsibilities and liabilities. We really trust the government to do that? No, that's why the private market is so great. It allows people like you and I to decide what kind of benefits we want, decide what kind of employment we want. It gives us options. If the government runs everything, then they have a monopoly. We know what monopolies look like. They're not good, and they typically result in a failure for everyone else other than the beneficiaries. Now, another thing nobody really likes to talk about when it comes to switching over to single-payer insurance is the fact that 79 to 90% of all medical innovations happen in the private sector. This too is being under attack, is becoming under attack by Senator Elizabeth Warren, not Kamala Harris, but Senator Elizabeth Warren. You know, the 1,024th Native American who's the whitest person in America. She has talked about ending the private sector for the creation of medicine, vaccines, instruments, all that, you name it, and having the government do that. So not only in the Democrats' ideal world will the government supply you health care, but the government will also supply you your medication. we haven't even touched on how we will pay for this. And we'll get there in a second. I just want to really drive this home. Do we truly want the government to be in every aspect of our lives? As of right now, we are very free. When do you have to interact with government officials other than getting your driver's license or getting a birth certificate, getting your social security card, getting maybe some benefits you have from the government, from entitlements you've paid into, etc. When, other than that, you don't have to deal with the government. And when you do have to deal with the government, it's usually very tedious, very frustrating. The people that work there are typically not the nicest people to be around. They seem as if they hate their job, and I know this is a broad generalization here, but from my experience, that's the vibe I get from going into a DMV or the Social Security, places like that. It appears to me that they don't really like their job. And I can see and understand that because you have to deal with people all day who feel the government has to supply them with something, whether, more in particular when it comes to benefits. So I can see that becoming strenuous on the employers, on the employees themselves of the government worker, for the government. So why do we want to expand that? They do a horrible job at keeping up the roads. They have to lease out roads to private contractors or private companies. That way, they, the private company, can afford to do the upkeep and then in return get some of the toll money and get some tax money as well. The government isn't that great in maintaining infrastructures. The government isn't that great at anything to do when it comes to fiscal responsibility, yet we want them to control one of the most important aspects of our lives, our health. We want to give them complete and utter control of that. It's just completely asinine. And now to circle back around to the price of this, they always say that the rich are going to pay for it. They've been attacking billionaires. We've seen a tweet now from Elizabeth Warren actually dogging I believe he is an Atlanta Hawk owner or a baseball team owner. He bought a $100 million yacht. And she tweeted out saying something along the lines, why is it okay for him to spend $100 million on a yacht when there are plenty of yachtless people who need money? We can tear apart how stupid that is because Ben Shapiro actually did a segment on this and he covered it. And, there are so many people that get employed from making that yacht. So it really doesn't make any sense as to why you would dog that. That's the beauty of capitalism. That's the beauty of a free market. You allow people to decide what they want to do, and there's an added benefit that you will reap what you sow. And when it comes to innovation and providing something that is of significant use in people's lives, will result in you making a lot of money. That's a huge incentive. We should keep that incentive. They're talking about doing away with that incentive. They're talking about taxing the rich, and the middleman, the middle income people, the lower income people will benefit from it. When in reality, if we look at a set of countries that they want to model this socialist system off of, the Scandinavian countries is what I'm referring to, we see that the average income earners are being taxed anywhere from 40 to 60%. That's huge. And their business taxes are much lower at around 22 to 27%. That goes against what Democrats are saying will happen here. They're talking about taxing the rich of the rich and the companies, when in actuality all that's going to do is drive rich people from America, drive corporations from America, and now we have less employment, less money coming in to fund these programs, resulting in the increase of tax rates throughout the country, leaving the little guys, you and I, to pick up the burden in the name of benevolence, I guess is what you could call that. It's completely insane what they're trying to do, and people are buying into it as if it is a beautiful idea. In reality, it isn't. Unfortunately, so many people my age and in my generation think we should have the government pay for our health care. Yet, I see them all the time complaining about how our government is ran and how inefficient it's being run, and the inadequacies it produces on a frequent basis, yet they want to give it more power. They want to give it more control. This thing, which we all agree does a good job at protecting its citizens, as in we have no foreign invaders. You can make the argument for illegal immigration. I get it. I'm talking about an actual military force coming over here and doing harm to our citizens. That's not what's happening. Our government does a good job at that. You can disagree at how it does it, but it does a decent job at doing its only job in protecting the citizens. Everything else it tries to do turns out to be really, really bad. Or it had good intentions, but ended up being extremely detrimental to our society. We can look at Social Security, for example. That is about to be completely depleted by, if I'm not mistaken, 2032 or somewhere in that time frame. Yet, we're not even talking about any reform for that. Same goes with Medicaid. If I'm not mistaken, by somewhere in the 2020s, we're going to start paying more on interest on our debts than we pay in Medicaid. How are we supposed to keep up with these entitlements if we're going to be paying more in interest than we do to provide people with already a form of state-run health care? It just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And another thing that doesn't make any sense is the fact that these Democrats like Senator Harris, Senator Warren, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the list goes on, they all support, by and large, illegal immigration. Or they do nothing to curb it, or no, those would be the only two things. Either they support it or they do nothing to curb it. They turn a blind eye to it or encourage it. That's what sanctuary cities do. They encourage it. You either have one or two options. You can encourage more cities to become sanctuaries for the illegals, or you can turn a blind eye to it and do nothing. That's what the Democrats are doing right now. And how are we supposed to have this utopia when we're on the verge paying more in interest and debt? We can't even afford Social Security, and in the next less than a decade, less than 10 years, we won't even be able to afford, no, a little over 10 years, I'm sorry, a little over 10 years, we won't even be able to afford Social Security for our own citizens, and yet we're going to be able to provide free health care for everyone? The Scandinavian countries have extremely stringent immigration laws, practically to the point that is non-existent. And they have universal health care. A lot of countries that have universal health care have really stringent immigration policies because of that reason. People will come over there and abuse the system. We already have illegal immigrants doing that with some of our, with the dole already. We already have that. And now you want to exacerbate it. They want to exacerbate it, as I've already said. In my opinion, I think this has a lot to do with some type of globalism. We can argue the tactics in which they're going about and how it's not right as far as their attempt at globalism. And we can also debate whether globalism will happen. Is it good? Should we maintain nation states? Bottom line is, that's my opinion when it comes to the globalism thing. As to why they encourage illegal immigration while encouraging universal health care, it just doesn't make any sense. And, you know, another thing that I find really funny, speaking on this whole support of illegal immigration, Chuck Schumer said that he wants Stacey Abrams to give the rebuttal to Trump's State of the Union address. She openly supported illegal immigration. They only want her because they did a horrible job at the rebuttal themselves. Who I'm referring to is Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, in case you weren't aware. And she's a woman. She's black. They claim she was cheated out of an election. And she supports illegal immigration, so she's the perfect person to have to go against somebody with the wall. Lastly, what I find the most really, I mean, it's kind of saddening. They had to get a non-elected official to do this. They couldn't find somebody in Congress or in the Senate to give the speech. Anyway, I digress. Getting back to the topic at hand. Really what they do is they paint the picture that the rich and the businessmen are only going to have to pay for these services. As we've just looked at the numbers and talked about immigration, we see that the people who are going to have to shoulder the burden of this are you and I. Not the rich. It's going to be the average, everyday folks, while people like Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, etc. are deciding whether or not you can get that health care treatment, deciding whether or not you can go overseas for health care, deciding whether or not you can get that medication. I mean, why do we want that? We shouldn't want that. We are slowly stripping away our freedoms, our liberties, little by little, yet we apparently don't realize it. You know, so, and a thing that gets me, I'm not much on character assassinations. I'm not much on character assaults. Although, I believe character says a lot about a person. I really, really do. How you hold yourself, how you respect others and respect yourself says a lot about who you are as an individual. With that, do you really believe a woman, i.e. Senator Kamala Harris, who is willing to be a side chick to a married man, has your best interest at heart? Do you really think that? She was then promoted several times to state commissions, six-figure jobs during the time frame she was dating the mayor in Oakland or San Francisco. I can't remember. His last name is Brown. But very powerful man in California for the Democratic Party. She was sleeping with him. He's married. And she was 30, he was 60. Is that somebody who you really, really, really want to run your government? Really? Is it? To me, that speaks volumes. And it's also very telling that Democrats aren't even trying to support the idea of Obamacare anymore. They've completely gotten rid of it because all it's done has worsened the healthcare market to the point where Democrats now say the only solution is single-payer healthcare. We've tried the free market and it failed. Not really, though. What we've done is interject government interventions several times throughout the past few decades, and then we implement Obamacare, and then now we want to say, forget this, we want complete control over health care. Isn't it crazy? I've had the idea that, and I'm not the only one with this idea, but Obamacare was just a segue for them to get in single payer. That's all it ever was. It got us closer to that. It started to restrict private insurance companies more. It started to regulate a lot more. It made it difficult for you and I to get certain things paid for, or it made it difficult for us to even afford health insurance because the premiums were skyrocketing. And if you didn't want it, you couldn't afford it, didn't matter. You had to pay a tax at the end of the year. They're forcing you to do stuff, yet we want to let them do everything for us when it comes to health. It doesn't make any sense to me. It really, really doesn't. You know, and all she really wants, just like most Democrats I believe now, is power and to dominate Americans. Another reason I say that is in this same segment, she went on to call out for an outright ban of assault weapons without ever clarifying what that is. Not only that, but she insisted we make a new law exactly like a law we currently have. Background checks before purchasing a firing arm to ensure we're not giving it to a felon. We already have those in place. For some reason, Democrats forget that and are saying we need to implement better gun laws. It's like we should just enforce the gun laws we currently have. And it would do everything that you're proposing to do other than banning weapons. The first issue I want to address is that according to the FBI, more people are killed with knives and cutting instruments than they were killed by rifles in 2016, which I assume she is alluding to when she says assault weapons. The exact number of people killed by knives are 1,604. And for rifles, it's 374. Either way you slice it, it sucks when anybody dies or their life is shortened. I mean, we're all going to die. It more specifically sucks when a life is shortened due to unforeseen circumstances or a situation arising out of a heated moment. That's horrible. But we see more people dying being killed by knives than rifles. On top of that, more people were killed by handguns in 2016 than were by knives and rifles combined. They have racked up a body count of 7,105, which makes you wonder what the real agenda is here, since assault rifles kill far less people than handguns or knives. It's really curious. It's curious. I'm curious to know exactly why they dodge these questions. I have my assumptions. I can speculate. We can all speculate and say they're doing it for malevolent reasons. There's a secret agenda behind it. However, it could truly be a benevolent move. It could truly be them trying to ensure the people of our country are safer because the average citizen won't have access to a firearm that is capable of shooting out multiple bullets in an instant. I would only give them the benefit of the doubt if that was true, because you could shoot out a handgun, which most handguns are semi-automatic, can shoot the same rate as an AR-15 can. In some instances, shoot higher capacity ammunition as well. And you also have shotguns that are semi-automatic, which shoot higher capacity rounds than AR-15s do. So that argument doesn't really hold unless they're ignorant to the other guns, which is definitely an issue, I believe, when it comes to the average person who disagrees with the right to own an assault weapon. And something else that they don't ever talk about is 2/3 of firearm deaths are suicides. And just because you outlaw a gun trying to save society from themselves doesn't mean people aren't going to find other ways to kill themselves. In Japan, you have high suicide rates, and virtually nobody other than the military owns a gun in Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not as if suicide rates plummet when you ban guns. We see that not being the case. And we can even see what it would look like without citizens having a right to own a gun if we go to Britain on the end of as far as the murder rate, if that'll help out at all. We'll go to another country as opposed to looking at the cities within our own that have some of the most strictest gun laws, i.e. Chicago is one of them that comes to mind. So if we go over to Britain, who has outlawed guns for citizens, in an article, in a Guardian article rather, written in February 2018, it shows that stabbing deaths among young people hit 8-year high. This should make it clear that guns aren't the problem. In one of my classes, we have been talking about whether or not science is good or bad. And one of my classmates hit the nail right on the head with this when she said something along the lines of, science is tainted by human nature. That's exactly the issue we have here. I mean, guns aren't the problem. People are the issue. You're going to have your anomalies. You will not ever be able to completely eradicate anomalies from existing in our world. That just will not happen. The bottom line is, we have conclusive data to suggest when people are armed, the population as a whole tends to be safer. Less crimes arise in areas where gun ownership is high. That's just the truth. And it's pretty self-explanatory as to why that is if you just sit back and think about it for a second. Does a criminal want to risk going into an area, breaking into a home that is known to have firearm owners? Probably not. But in New York, I bet you they would now with the retreat doctrine. This is the liberal America that people like Senator Kamala Harris want to see. Retreat doctrine in New York, coupled with the late-term abortion bill that just passed in New York. The retreat doctrine, if you don't know, essentially is the opposite of the castle doctrine, which the castle doctrine is the right to defend your house if somebody breaks into it. If somebody was to break into your house, you have the right to drop that person dead on the spot. The retreat doctrine says you must hide and call the police. Don't hurt the intruder. What the hell? What the hell? Take away your guns. Don't allow you to protect your home. Allow the slaughtering of fully grown babies. Take away your choice of health insurance. And control every aspect of your medication. What else do the Democrats want to take hold of? What else? This is truly concerning. We have a person running for president. One, my wife agrees with this. She has no charisma. She sounds like she's about to have a nervous breakdown almost every time she speaks. She has no presence. I couldn't see her being the leader of our nation, let alone any nation. This isn't me dogging on her because she's a woman. Quite frankly, I think Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador and, if I'm not mistaken, the governor of South Carolina, I'll check that. But yeah, I have no problem with a woman being president. I just believe you need to have the presence, charisma, and demand the respect a president has to be given. And yes, Nikki Haley was the governor of South Carolina. But yeah, I can see her being president. The Homeland Secretary, I could see her in some sort of presidential, I could see her in a presidential role as well. I'm not saying she should, but the demeanor she brings to the table is light years better and ahead, rather than better, light years ahead of Kamala Harris. That's it. And Kamala Harris is extremely unqualified for the job. I mean, when she was Attorney General in California, the crime rates did not go down, they went up. So what's going to happen in America if she's our president? I guess all we can do is wait and see. I will tell you I am very excited about watching these debates come 2020. Whether or not Trump wins, it's going to be really entertaining. I hope he wins, although, as I've already expressed my opinions on this, I think he is going to have a very difficult time if he doesn't give the wall, which he probably won't. Senator Kamala Harris even said in this same segment that she would not support giving a dime to a wall. So I doubt that he's going to get it. He'll have to declare national emergency and he'll still lose it. Anyway, it's going to be very entertaining to watch Donald Trump tear apart a bunch of other people at debates. I can't wait to see what he'll do against Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris with the news of her affair, well, of her being a side chick. I'm really interested to see what he'll have to say. That'll be very entertaining. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. But that's today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you again.